Donnie and Dolly, the team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
Just ahead of Thomas Drance, a reminder that our inbox is sponsored by our friends at Delaney's OK Tire in Langley, in business for over 20 years. Right?
Oh, so nice.
20 plus.
Beautiful lobby there, huge TV.
OK Tire is Canadian-owned and operated from coast to coast.
It is.
Clayton and Brett Delaney are second-generation owners, and they handle all the major tire brands as well as custom wheels and suspension, leveling kits, lifts, and full mechanical services. I get my oil change there.
Oh, yeah.
And by oil change, I mean oil change. Visit them at 19863 Fraser Highway in Langley. The Young Stars tournament starts tonight in Penticton. Canucks against the Flames at 7:30 in the Okanagan. From the Athletic, he's in Penticton, if I'm not mistaken. As always on a Friday, Sir Thomas Drance. How are you, sir?
Oh, I've been knighted. My goodness.
Yes.
My grandmother will be so proud.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I'm in Penticton in a nondescript motel room. Looking forward to watching hockey again, Canucks hockey again. Obviously not. It's not the Canucks, but they'll be wearing the Canucks crest. They'll be wearing Canucks colors. And the Okanagan or the South Okanagan Event Center is always a good environment to watch a game. So looking forward to it.
And we thank you for going all out on the background of this, Zoom hit. Hey, Thomas, you wrote a couple of articles on the beautiful. You wrote an article in the Athletic on the Canucks' top prospects, top 10, I believe. Who's number one?
We had Jonathan Lecker-Mackey, number one. We used Rick Dollywall's spelling too. I saw Rick Dollywall use the accent on Twitter.
Paste.
Now, can I hear you say the last name though, Rick?
Lecker-Mackey.
Lecker-Mackey, nailing it. Awesome.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, but you just said it differently though, Thomas. How do you say
what
it?
did I call him? You had it right.
Lecker-Mackey.
I'm copying you now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anyway, Jonathan Lecker-Mackey is the Canucks prospect with far and away the most upside, right? I mean, this is a team that hasn't made he's the only first-round pick they've made since 2019. There's just no one else in the system with that sort of top-end ability. And when you look at what Lecker-Mackey, excuse me, Rick, achieved as a 17-year-old in the SHL, right? He scored 7 goals. He hung around the entire season. The team got relegated. It wasn't a particularly good team, but for a 17-year-old in that league, a pretty tough men's league, to score like that tends to be a very good sign, right? Like most guys who produce at that level at a relatively precocious age like that tend to go on to be NHL players. The only other guy who's really done it and was a high pedigree first-round pick was William Nylander. He's a scoring star in the NHL. Those are highly impressive comparables. I know Lecker-Mackey didn't have the greatest performance at the World U20 tournament, but he was sick. It wasn't really a U20 tournament. It was a U21 tournament. He was young for it. No concerns on my end from that. The sort of one thing that I suppose is a little bit of a yellow light, I suppose, a little bit of caution for Canucks fans to consider is, for these guys who are sniper type prospects, and we've seen this time and time again, that's a player type that can sometimes struggle to pay off their draft costs in the NHL. And we've seen it with guys like Owen Tippett. Jake Virtanen would be a familiar name to Canucks fans. Eli Tolvanen in Nashville would be another example. Some of those sort of sniper type players, that shot needs to be super elite to play in the NHL. It's not sufficient to just be a really high-end shooter to be a star player in the league. And sometimes some of the more dual threat oriented prospects can develop a little bit better, pay off their draft cost a little more, but there's a lot to be excited about with Lecker-Mackey, and playing in the Allsvenskan this year, the Swedish second tier. That seems like a perfect spot for him to continue to level up, and hopefully at future Penticton Young Stars tournaments, we'll have a chance to watch him.
Rathbone, Klimovich, who else do you like in that top 10, Thomas?
Well, Rathbone's the guy that I really personally like in terms of thinking he's got a real shot. Usually a 23-year-old defenseman who's been point per game plus in the American League as both a 21 and a 22-year-old, like sometimes that's a red flag that there must be something wrong with his defensive game. But when you look at the context of the last 2 seasons, when you consider the pandemic-influenced lack of games that Rathbone has been able to play at the pro ranks over the last 2 years, that sort of mitigates my concern almost entirely. I think the organization understands that he should have been on the roster late last season. Clearly explicitly, they went with lower risk defensive pieces, more experienced guys on their third pair when Rathbone probably should have been getting a shot, partly because they felt that, the team had earned it. The team had earned the right to see how far they could take their, ultimately short, but nonetheless impressive run back into the playoff picture. So Rathbone ended up getting the short end of the stick. I think that was part of why the team signed him to a one-way deal, a 2-year one-way deal relatively early in the offseason. I think they wanted to show him that there's still a lot of belief in his ability. I think he's going to make the 23-man roster. I don't know if he'll make the opening night roster. I don't know if he'll be in the lineup on opening night when the Canucks play in Edmonton on October 12th, but he's got a real shot, and this team needs what he has on the back end in terms of that speed, in terms of that creativity, in terms of the puck moving upside. Moving the puck, escaping the zone with control. Those were big issues for this team last year. Rathbone can help address that, even if there are going to be a few growing pains, as there are for all young defensemen in his own end.
Thomas, Alex Chase on a PTO in Arizona. We were kind of wondering, Canucks love him, by the way, but he goes to Arizona. Canucks still have around, as you've said, $1.3 million left to play with. We're told they're being patient with the money. Maybe something they pick up on the waiver wire. So what are you hearing on that? Do you think there's a possibility of another PTO in Vancouver?
I think there's a possibility. I've sort of heard it intimated that the club's considering it, has considered it. I wouldn't be stunned if they did that if it was a blue liner. Yeah, I still think there's a desire to bring in additional depth, additional options on that back end. But I look at in particular the Canucks' decision to sign Neil Zaman and Philip Johansson after they went unsigned, and sort of see a clean line between that approach and the waiver wire. Right? I mean, you look at teams around the league. And you look at the amount of teams that have 10 defensemen on one-way contracts, right? Yep. There are teams that are loaded in terms of just numbers on the back end. Some of those guys are ending up on waivers. Some of them have to. Guys like Victor Mete, who's a pretty good young player, right? Yep. He's going to be on waivers, almost certainly, based on the Maple Leafs cap picture. Jordy Ben, a familiar name for Canucks fans. He can play. He's going to be on waivers. There's going to be options on the waiver wire. I wonder if they sort of wait and preserve their flexibility for that moment. Although mitigating that, gentlemen, is, I still look at this cap situation that the Canucks are facing and the LTI mechanics of getting Ferland onto LTI and maximizing their capture when they do so, and think that there's probably another couple of one-way contracts that the Canucks themselves need to put through waivers. So they'll need to be careful about adding additional commitments of any kind. Into the mix. One advantage of a PTO is that and they did this with Chase on last year, is that in putting Ferland on LTI and maximizing your capture, you're able to sign the guy to the exact amount at the exact moment that you need that cap hit to hit your books. It gives you some additional options. There's certainly additional flexibility that comes from that, as opposed to the waiver route where you're making an additional commitment. And, I do think the Canucks are probably going to face some pretty difficult decisions with some desirable assets who may need to go through waivers just to make it all work, particularly because, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but guys like Kuzmenko and Podkolzin, who have significant bonuses attached to their entry-level deals, they're not options to go beneath the line and come back up, because you effectively have to double dip. You increase their cap hit. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate it. That would be my only sort of concern in terms of them using the waiver wire. But when you look through some of the players that teams have acquired using that device over the last couple of years, the impact that they've had on the blue line, you think about Gustav Forsling, former Canucks draft pick in Florida, as a prime example. There's some pretty interesting options. And if the Canucks are prepared to take a gamble on a young player, I suspect that they'll find more talent on the waiver wire the weekend of Canadian Thanksgiving than they will on the market at the moment.
And quickly, Thomas, before we let you go, I don't think we tackled this with you last week. Quinn Hughes on the right side. Can you see that working?
I don't love it. Honestly, I don't love it. I think he can do it. The thing about Quinn Hughes is that I think whatever you do that makes him more positionless is going to work because he's incredible. Mm-hmm. He's amazing. Yeah. But, think about all those times that Quinn Hughes walks down that left side half wall and all of the chaos that he creates in that spot. Do you want to lose that? Do you want to lose that? I don't know that there's anyone more creative as a passer up high from the left side half wall up to the blue line than Quinn Hughes is. He's so special at it. I don't even see any other defenseman in the league who use that space the way he does. I just
That's a good
wonder,
point.
do you risk losing something that makes your attack flow in such a dynamic way? And then here's the last thing, gentlemen. If you're deciding between Hughes or Ekman-Larsson on the right side, remember that on your offside, you always have the one-timer option, right? Mm-hmm. Who do you want passing from left to right to set up the one-timer between Oliver Ekman-Larsson and Hughes? It's obviously Hughes. Mm-hmm. Who do you want taking the shot? It's obviously Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So that to me is are sort of some of the reasons why I'd prefer to see Hughes stay on the left side. That said, if they try it, he's going to be able to do it because he's Quinn Hughes. He's Quinn freaking Hughes. He's incredible.
Yeah. Well said. Thomas, enjoy Penticton. Enjoy the action tonight. Starts at 4 o'clock. Not
Thank
the Canucks
you,
game. But
are you
Thanks,
trying
Thomas.
to tell me there's no pictures at all on the walls in your hotel room?
There's one if I go.
What did
there you
it?
go.
Yeah, why wouldn't you set it up that way?
The generic hotel room.
Because that way you can see that I haven't unpacked, Rick.
I don't want to look inside that suitcase. Lord knows what's in it.
I don't want to see what's in your suitcase. My goodness.
just a lot of wrinkly shirts, boys. A lot of wrinkly shirts.
That's not what I heard. Anyways.
Thomas, unpack. Thanks for this. Appreciate it. Thomas Drance in Penticton. He's right about Quinn Hughes. I marvel at the way he works just inside the blue line. Do you lose that when if he moves to the right side? Less comfortable a pass for a lefty on that right side when it comes to that. Interesting times. But if he said it, if anybody can do it on that roster,
it's Quinn.
It's the smooth skating Quinn Hughes.